My name Mary Armstrong. Interviewed in Houston, Texas. I'm 91 years old. You all has to excuse me if I don't talk so good, 'cause I've been feeling poorly for a spell and I ain't so young no more. Law me, when I think back what I used to do, now it's all I can do to hobble round a little. Why, Miss Olivia, my mistress, used to put a glass plumb full of water on my head and have me waltz round the room, and I'd dance so smooth like I don't spill nary drop. That was in St. Louis, where I was born. You see, my mama belonged to old William Cleveland and old Polly Cleveland, and they was the meanest two white folks what ever lived, 'cause they was always beating on their slaves. I know, 'cause Mama told me, and I hears about it other places, and besides, old Polly, she was a Polly devil, if there ever was one, and she whipped my little sister, which was only 9 months old, and just a baby, to death. She come and took the diaper offen my little sister and whipped till the blood just ran, just 'cause she'd cry, like all babies did, and they killed my sister. I never forgot that, but I got some even with old Polly Devil, and it's like this-a-way. You see, I was about 10 years old, and I belongs to Miss Olivia, what was that old Polly's daughter, and one day old Polly Devil comes to where Miss Olivia lives after she marries and tries to give me a lick out, and I picks up a rock about as big as half your fist and hits her right in the eye and busts the eyeball and tells her that's for whipping my baby sister to death. You could hear her holler for 5 miles, but Miss Olivia, when I tells her, she says, well, I guess Mama has learnt her lesson at last. But that old Polly was mean, like her husband, old Cleveland, till she die, and I hopes they is burning in torment now. I don't remember about the start of things so much, 'cept what Miss Olivia and my mama, her name Miss Sylvie, tells me. Course, it's powerful cold in winter times, and the farm was lots different from down here. They calls them plantations down here, but up at St. Louis they was just called farms. And that's what they were, 'cause we raises wheat and barley and rye and oats and corn and fruit. The houses was builded with brick and heavy wood too, 'cause it's cold up there, and we had to wear them warm clothes, and they wove on the place, and we worked at it in the evening. Old Cleveland takes a lot of his slaves what was in custom and brings 'em to Texas to sell. You know he won't supposed to do that, 'cause when you're in custom, that's 'cause he borrowed money on you, and you're not supposed to leave the place till he paid up. Course old Cleveland just tells the one he owes the money to you had run off or squirmed out some way. He was that mean. Mama says she was in one bunch and me another. Mama had been put before this with my papa, Sam Adams, but that makes no difference to old Cleveland. He's so mean he never would sell the man and the woman and the children the same one. He sell the man here and the woman there, and if they children, he'd sell them someplace else. Old Satan and Torment couldn't be no meaner than what he and old Polly was to they slaves. He'd chain a nigger up to whip 'em and rub salt and pepper on 'em, like he said, to season 'em up. And when he'd sell a slave, he'd grease their mouth all up to make it look like they been fed good and they strong and healthy. Well, Mama says they hadn't no more'n got to Shreveport before some lawman caught old Cleveland and takes 'em all back to St. Louis. Then my little sister's born, the one old Polly Devil killed, and I was about 4 years old then. Miss Olivia takes a liking to me, and though her papa and mama so mean, she's kind to everyone, and they just love her. She marries to Mr. Will Adams, what was a fine man, and has about 5 farms and 500 slaves, and he buys me for her from old Cleveland and pays him $2,500 and gives him George Henry, a nigger, to boot. Lawsy, I's sure happy to be with Miss Olivia and away from old Cleveland and old Polly, 'cause they killed my little sister. We lives in St. Louis on Chinquil Hill, and I's house girl, and when the babies start to come, I nurses 'em and spins thread for cloths on the loom. I spin 6 cuts of thread a week, but I had plenty of time for myself, and that's where I learns to dance so good. Law, I sure just crazy about dancing. If I sittin' eatin' my victuals and hears a fiddle play, I gets up and dances. Mr. Will and Miss Olivia sure is good to me, and I never calls Mr. Will massa neither, but when they's company. I calls him Mr. Will, and round the house by ourselves I calls 'em Papa and Mammy, 'cause they raises me up from a little girl. I hears old Cleveland done took my mama to Texas again, but I couldn't do nothing, 'cause Miss Olivia wouldn't have much trunk with her folks. Once in a while old Polly comes over, but Miss Olivia tells her not to touch me or the others. Old Polly tries to buy me back from Miss Olivia, and if they had, they'd killed me sure. But Miss Olivia say I'd wade in blood as deep as hell before I'd let you have Mary. That just the very words she told 'em. Then I hears my papa is sold some place I don't know where. Course I didn't know him so well, just what Mama done told me, so that didn't worry me like Mama being took so far away. One day Mr. Will says, "Mary, you want to go to the river and see the boat race?" Law me, I never won't forget that. Where we live, it ain't far to the Mississippi River, and pretty soon here they come, the Natchez and the Eclipse, with smoke and fire just pouring out of they smokestack. The old captain of the Eclipse start putting in bacon meat in the boiler, and the grease just comes out a-blazing, and it beat the Natchez to pieces. I stays with Miss Olivia till 63, when Mr. Will set us all free. I was about 17 years old then and more. Away I'm going to find my mama. Mr. Will fixes me up 2 papers, one about a yard long and the other some shorter, but both has big gold seals, what he says is the seal of the state of Missouri. He gives me money and buys my fare ticket to Texas, and tells me that still is a slave time down there, and to put the papers in my bosom, but to do whatever the white folks tell me, even if they wants to sell me. But he says, before you gets off the block, just pull out the papers, but just hold 'em up to let folks see, and don't let 'em out of your hands. And when they sees them, they have to let you alone. Miss Olivia cry and carry on, and says be careful of myself, 'cause it sure is rough in Texas. She give me a big basket what had so much to eat in it I could hardly heft it, and another with clothes in it. They puts me in the back end of the boat, where the big old wheel what run the boat was, and I'm going to New Orleans, and the captain puts me on another boat, and I come to Galveston, and that captain put me on another boat, and I comes up this here Buffalo Bayou to Houston. I looks round Houston, but not long. It sure was a dumpy little place then, and I gets the stagecoach to Austin. It takes us 2 days to get there, and I thinks my back busted sure enough. It was such rough riding. Then I had trouble sure. A man asked me where I was going, and says to come along, and he takes me to Mr. Charlie Crosby. They takes me to the block what they sell slaves on. I gets right up like they tells me, 'cause I click what Mr. Will done told me to do, and they start bidding on me. And when they cried off, and this Mr. Crosby come up to get me, I just pulled out my papers and heft 'em up high, and when he sees 'em, he says, 'Let me see them.' But I says, 'You just look at 'em from up here.' He squinted up and said, 'This gal am free and has papers,' and tells me he a legislature man, and takes me and lets me stay with his slaves. He's a good man. He tells me there's a slave refugee camp in Wharton County, but I don't have no money left. But he pays me some for working, and when the war's over I starts to hunt Mama again, and finds her at the Wharton County near where Wharton is. Law me, talk about crying and singing and crying some more. We just done it. I stays with Mama till I gets married in 1871 to John Armstrong, and then we all comes to Houston. I gets me a job nursing for Dr. Rilliford, and was all through the yellow fever epidemic. I collect in 75 people died just like sheep with the rots. I seen folks with the yellow fever jump from their bed with death on 'em and grab other folks. The doctor saved lots of folks, white and black, 'cause he sweated out of 'em. He mixed up hot water and vinegar and mustard and some else in 'em. But Lord me, so much is going out of my mind, 'cause I's 91 years old now, and my mind just like my legs, just kind of hobble round a bit.